Hello, hello, guys. A little bit behind. Okay, guys. We're about to go live on all channels. Um, y'all ready? I'm ready too. This is hot, hot, hot. Sexual violence during slavery, or the other title is When Rape Was Legal. Take the time to like this, share it. I got a couple of you. Come on, let's get this kicking, y'all. Get it kicking. Sexual violence during slavery. Come on, this is worth it. We don't even get to have these kinds of conversations it's hinted about. We gotta get this. Come on. So come in. There are four people, there are two. Okay, moderators, no bullshit. Anybody that says anything stupid, 24 hours is my rule. Anyone that says anything dumb, kick him out for 24 hours if I don't permanently remove him. I don't disturb anybody's lives. I never do that under any circumstances. I don't care what they're saying. It can't happen to me either. The book I'm reading from is When Rape Was Legal by Rachel Feinstein, and it talks about sexual slavery sexual violence during slavery. Please forgive me. For some reason, only today, my nose just keeps draining for hours. I've been taking drugs and everything. I don't want my nose, but it went from super cold to springtime, so the pollen's gone crazy. Um, so please bear with me. I'm not trying to gross you out blowing. I wanted to stop. I took the Zyrtec. I took the Alexa. I took all of it, and it's still not like kicking in yet. So bear with me. It happens like that. So no, I don't like doing all this stupid stuff, but it happens. I'm about to be on all the channels. How many of you guys are ready for Jaguar? How many of you are ready for Jaguar? Who's coming at 7 o'clock? You'll be able to hear it, and I'm gonna be return, go live. Okay, so we got some people, and we're gonna start in just a second. We'll be a little bit behind. Let me go ahead and start this other recording here. This is a gift from one of my wonderful friends, my brother Jerome. I should put on my cook hat. Can I put on my cook hat? I'm gonna put on my cook hat. I might be sitting on it. I just have lots of stuff. I like I like my booty. I don't like my behind the hood when I'm sitting down. It's a long time. Let me get my hat on. These books in this series, let me just introduce this, and so we can get right into it. Oop, a bunch of books fell down. That's okay. Let me go ahead and put this on. It's on. Start recording. This is the Angry Black Men's Book Club. Today is the 26th of February, 2025. It's approximately 5:16 p.m., and I'm the host of the Angry Black Men's Book Club with our first reading in a very long time. And our reading is by Rachel Feinstein, When Rape Was Legal. This is a very short book, but it's very expensive. There's a whole series of books. In fact, let me put some glasses on so I can look scholastic. Okay, get ready for this. This book is very expensive and it's not even 100 pages. When I ask you guys for donations so I can share this stuff, it's because the stuff is so costly. All of the hardback books in this series from Routledge Press, which is in England, they're all in excess of $200. I mean, this is a cheap paperback, and it was like about $50 for me to get this very short book, but it had a topic that needed to be dealt with. And so I want you to look at the book. And yes, this is like a public service. I'm happy to do it because these books are expensive. They're very expensive. And they do that on purpose to make this unavailable to us. This is another reason I get shadow banned. I'm sharing information you're not supposed to have. This is from the New Critical Viewpoints on Society series. And this is done by Routledge Press, which is in New York and London. And there are a couple of these books. I just ordered one today. This is When Rape Was Legal, The Untold Story of Sexual Violence During Slavery, again by Rachel A. Feinstein. There's another book, which if you get a hardback, it's at least $200, Killing African Americans, Police and Vigilante Violence as a Racial Control Mechanism. Try to get the paperback. The paperback is like $50. There's another one, Racism in the Neoliberal Era, A Meta-History of White Elite Power by Randolph Huhale. There's another one, Violence Against Black Bodies, edited by Sandra Wessinger. And this is stuff other people around the world know what's happening with us. We don't. And we need to understand that there's a whole body of literature. So again, I'm going to repeat the title of this book. I want you to see it. And I like to read directly from the book. I don't want you to think I'm not all that smart, but I do love books. We need to have our own personal libraries. They're closing libraries with this changing of funding. If you don't have your own books and materials, people, you're going to be in the dark. You're going to be in the dark. That's the whole plan. That's why they're shutting down programs and changing it. Every human being, Black, needs to become your own archivist for your family, for your people. Stop taking books lightly. When Europe didn't come out of the Dark Ages until the Moors and other people started bringing them books. Books are important. That's why I said we're going to call this the Angry Black Men's Book Club. So again, let me get on with this. I'm going to skip the, I'm going to get right into the foreword. And I'm going to try to read as much of this as possible between now and, say 6:45, 6:50. Because I have to be ready for Jaguar. Isn't that great? We're going all over the world. Okay. Are y'all ready? Here we go. Hi to you down in Florida. Reggie Laster. There's a book. Could you email me, Reggie, at DrRandyShort@gmail.com? There are 4 or 5 books that I'm getting on racism in Florida. So yeah, and anybody, please always write. You can always email me, DrRandyShort@gmail.com. I try to write people back. If you're in Florida or Pennsylvania, that's where I'm trying to get books now to look at the Black situation there. There are a bunch of books by, I believe, well, I can't open it up and do this in my phone, but the person, hey, Brooke, make certain that that person from Florida gets my email. People don't pay attention even when I post it. And, you know, trying to talk to me when I'm doing this is not going to work. Hello, Mrs. Kelly. Thank you for all the great work you did for my birthday event. Thank you, everybody, for the good wishes. Thank you for all the support. And let's get on with this. And let me have you know what? Nothing like being a little high. I'm going to have some ginseng. Oh, yes, I am. That's good. Get a little bit more. Religious people need drugs too. All you sinners out there. You get yours from a pusher. I get mine from Amazon. Oh, and I've got some ashwagandha. Oh, this stuff. Woo! This may actually this will help me with my jokes. I need a little bit of help to be funny. Psych. I come funny naturally. Y'all don't mind if I get a little high before I start. It's natural. No, this is maca root. Oh, this is going to make me a little horny too. Well, yield not to temptation. This is good. I haven't even opened this bottle, so let me get a little high. Just a little high. But it's natural. Then we go get down to business, right? And if I have to do a part 2, would you guys come back if I don't finish because we need to see Jaguar? That wasn't so bad. I'm going to do 2. I may do 3. That's enough. Wasn't as good as the ginseng. What is this thing saying? Battery low. Okay. I'm going to put 2 more batteries in here. It's amazing when you get these notices. Okay, here we go. I'm glad at least it told me and throw these batteries out. Put this back in here. Hope these batteries are some good. I hope these things aren't dull. Otherwise, I may have, that's okay. If I don't have it in a second, we're going to go anyway. All these batteries could be bad. I just throw these suckers out. Okay, guys. Sometimes you only learn when you do it. Okay. Just a little bit longer here. Let's see if these are good. If they're all bad, I'll just have to roll with it, right? But we're good. Let me see if this is good. Ah, these are good. All right. What is this? I don't have time to do this. Why is this thing doing this? Please wait. Okay, guys, I'm going to let this thing figure itself out. Anyway, let's get to business. Let's get to business. This thing is going to get... Oh! The guy in Florida. Here it is. Guy in Florida. Hey, guy in Florida. To the person that's down in Florida. I got the book right here. I'm looking right at it. And I was thinking I'd have to go somewhere. If this thing doesn't give it to me, I'm going to set it aside. We'll have to do this another time. I'm going to get my power charge is in another room. It's amazing. Anybody in Florida? This guy, Gilbert King, he's got not just this book, Devil in the Grove, which is fascinating. You can get it on Amazon Audible. I've listened to it like twice. You don't really know how bad black folks have had it in Florida until you've read Gilbert King's books. He's got about 4 of them. Several in my basket. When I looked at my basket for books today, I'm not a rich person. When I think about all the books I have to get just to keep up with what's going on and have my library right, I got like a $1,200 list of books. I'm not going to get all of them, but I want to. So again, if you like this, I'm back to the reading. I'm ordering my ivermectin. We go to see the good naturopathic doctor that treats cancer. If you're in the DC area, you got to go and see Dr. Theodore Watkins. He's better than most of people naturally, and he's affordable, and he's in the hood. Dr. Theodore Watkins, if you're trying to find him, you can always drop me an email. I believe in sharing information. So I'm going to thank everybody. Now, without further ado, welcome again to the Angry Black Men's Book Club. I've been dying to read, and now we're going to get busy. I'm in the foreword of the book, When Rape Was Legal, Sexual Violence During Slavery by Rachel Feinstein. Her foreword. The distinguished African-American law professor Patricia Williams has underscored a critical but often forgotten reality of U.S. history as revealed in her ancestry. She describes the actions of her great great-great-grandfather, Austin Miller, a white lawyer who bought and enslaved her 11-year-old great-great-grandmother, Sophie. When she was 12 years old, Miller raped her. The resulting child was William's great-grandmother. Like many prominent white male Southerners in the slavery era, Williams's great-great-grandfather was a rapist. Today, few Americans, especially whites, are truly knowledgeable about this bloody, highly exploitative, and racialized U.S. past. This path-breaking book by the talented young sociologist Rachel Feinstein helps significantly in correcting this historical ignorance. As she shows, really knowing this history involves more than rehabilitating our historical amnesia, for such substantial knowledge is important for understanding and reducing today's systemic racism. When Rape Was Legal is century about the horrific and highly consequential violence of white men who aggressively targeted black women during the 246 years of this country's slavery era. This book demonstrates in irrefutable detail that too many discussions of contemporary racism conveniently ignore or intentionally dismiss the legacy of centuries of often violent white male oppression of black women and men during our systemically racist society was created and perpetuated indeed to the present day. This commonplace lack of an accurate collective memory and understanding of the violent racist U.S. past is central to the dominant white framing of this country. This framing includes the omission and the sanitizing of this history in all but a few public discussions of the slavery era. As Feinstein shows in detail, the powerful narrators of our history and the dominant group have usually suppressed, distorted, or fictionalized this racialized history of white violence and other oppression targeting black women. I have lately been reading an important historical book dealing centrally with the era of Francis Scott Key, the 19th century slaveholder who penned the U.S. national anthem. When the white author alludes to black women who were raped by white male slaveholders, he uses terms like consort, companion, mistress, or concubine. As with many other white historical accounts, men are never described with the word rapist. These white men's actions are often vaguely described or sanitized with phrasing like liaison between white slave owners and their black chattels were common. As Feinstein notes, other such language from historical and analysts includes minimizing the rape of black girls and women with phrases like sexual relations, committed miscegenation, seduced girls, and patronized prostitutes. This contemporary sanitizing language is by no means new, but has been characteristic of most such white accounts of this white male sexual violence for several centuries. In the past and present, this ignoring, minimizing, and sanitizing of white male violence has been central to the still dominant white racial frame. The white-generated worldview developed early in the slavery era by white men to rationalize the violent enslavement of African Americans. For centuries, this white frame has included a deep-seated pro-white subframe, emphasizing white superiority, virtuousness, and moral goodness. In contrast, it also includes a deep-seated anti-black subframe, emphasizing black inferiority, unvirtuousness, and immorality. Playing down or dismissing the tremendous white violence targeting black women, men, and children for centuries is essential to preserving the white, especially white male sense of white virtuousness and moral superiority. Even when they do remember U.S. history, most elite and ordinary whites are inconsistent as to which parts of past U.S. history they acknowledge and which parts they ignore or forget. In the thinking of most whites, for instance, the economic, political, and legal actions of the early white founders and later the white political leaders that have benefited whites that are given great weight and legitimacy, according, according to the prevailing white view, however, racially oppressive actions by these and other whites should be forgotten or forgiven. Indeed, a significant majority of whites today do not view the realities of slavery and subsequent Jim Crow oppression, which unjustly enriched generations of whites and unjustly impoverished generations of blacks, as significantly relevant to the current U.S. reality of continuing and the huge racial inequalities and commonplace institutionalized discrimination. In contrast to most whites, most African Americans have a better individual and collective memories of this long, hyper-racist past and a much better grasp of its many negative legacies today. Many African Americans, such as Professor Williams, have remembered and recorded significant portions of this past history of enslavement, even though they do not control most mainstream media and public history making, as we see in the data in this path-breaking book. African Americans have frequently provided and relied on both oral transmission of personal and family histories and the written accounts of earlier eras that somehow succeed in being recorded by their greatly oppressed ancestors. Feinstein includes in these personal written records of African Americans among her important sources not only recorded slave narratives, but also autobiographies and speeches of those formerly enslaved. These records, often in painful detail, personal experiences with an array of types of white sexual violence, not only raped, but also the forced breeding and other sexualized treatment of enslaved women. Feinstein cites numerous narratives by and about enslaved women in regard to the sexual exploitation and violence that they and their peers endured. Many of the others were prominent slaveholders, including the famous herald of American liberty, Virginia's Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. As a middle-aged widower, he coerced in various ways the enslaved teenager Sally Hemings into years of sexual relations. She was his niece, by the way, so it's incest and pedophilia. Thomas Jefferson. The high probability that he fathered at least one child with her has been indicated by DNA testing and contemporary contextual data. He didn't, not one, it's like 5 or 6. And she's not the only one, people. My math teacher, when I was in the 11th grade, was a great-great-great-granddaughter of Thomas Jefferson. And when I was at the University of Virginia, in 1993, they found skeletons of people on the campus of the University of Virginia. There was a black private burial plot that they had put a parking lot atop. And when they dug it up and they found bones, they tried to find out who were these people who they found behind Cabell Hall and near the Luther P. Jackson House on the University of Virginia's campus in Charlottesville, Virginia. So they came to the church I attended called First Baptist, and they asked the oldest black resident in the city, Mother McGinnis Johnson, who were these people that lived on the campus of the University of Virginia. And when Mother McGinnis Johnson said, those were Thomas Jefferson's children. They had red hair and freckles, and they hated us, and they never dealt with us. They always up there, they didn't deal with us. They cut the tapes off. They didn't want to know anymore. Thomas Jefferson, a whole bunch of these guys were whores. They made all kinds of black kids everywhere. And myself included, we have lots of rapist slave masters in our families. Thomas Jefferson, if he's the greatest American, he is also among the most wicked. Until recently, relatively most white commentators and white descendants of Jefferson denied the sexual reality. I want to say to you, as a person that does genealogy, on a couple of trees in Ancestry, they have it set up where you can't learn who the person is. So there's a man who probably raped a slave in one of my families. Last name is Joyner, who probably raped a black woman, and you can't find out who it is. And there's another one named Gray, and you can't find out who that is. And there's another one named Wiltshire, and you can't find out who that one is. And there's another one named Richard Short, and we can't find out who the woman was that he did it that made my great 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 grandfather Riddick. This stuff is real. And not only did they rape these women, they owned the children as slaves, did not treat them well. And a lot of black folks have abuse, pedophilia, and neglect all in our families because children copy their parents. Your white slave-holding great-great-great-grandpappy put these nasty negative traits that you attribute to the traditional black family. No, it comes from the barbarism, racism, and savagery of a white family. Let's get that straight. I'm not trying to make black folks who abuse and do things wrong right. But the abuse of children in my family, there's a straight line. And all the families where we have a white slave-holding father, that you have an issue of neglect and abuse of children and colorism. We're fucked up because they're fucked up, because they first fucked over us. And I said it just like that. I don't care if you don't like my language. We have some official U.S. Census records indicating the likely scale of white male rape of black women. The 1850 census reported 406,000 Americans as visibly mulatto, a racial epithet or a slur for multiracial. About 11% of the African American population at that time. In addition, as Feinstein underscores, an analysis of more than 500 narratives from once enslaved women found that 12% noted the reality of interracial sex during their slavery years. And this percentage is likely to be a significant underestimate of the actual percentage of black women who experienced white sexual violence under slavery, greater than 1 in 10. Given these figures, it is reasonable to suggest that the number of white male rapes of enslaved women during the 246 years of slavery might well have reached into the millions of rapes. And it also seems clear that during this long era, many millions of black women were sexually and violently targeted in this and some other way by a large array of elite and ordinary white men, sailors, slave masters, overseers, other employers, and government officials. Clearly, this country's slavery system entailed massive amounts of physical and emotional pain and suffering for millions of black girls and women, as well as for their male relatives, unsurprisingly too. These girls and women, as well as their relatives, did develop what precautions they could to prevent or avoid at least some of the white male violence. Yet there were major limits on how much they could do in this regard. As the title of this book signals, a distinctive aspect of North American slavery was that such rape and other sexual violence was legal. In fact, there's no such thing as white on black rape. Whites can't rape blacks. I challenge any of you to go out and do your research, and you'll find it's almost impossible to find cases of white men raping black women. In the last 20 years of my life, I've only been able to find 2 cases of white men that got brought up on rape. One in Florida in the 1950s, that's in this book, The Devil in the Grove. And there was a case in Mississippi in 1955-56 where a group of white men raped a black woman and they tried to kill her. She survived. They didn't get charged for rape. They got charged with attempted manslaughter. Okay, because they didn't believe that white men would try to rape a black woman. These men were punished. By the way, Sister Brooke, if you go to Amazon Audible, Mr. King has many books that talks about Florida. At the same time, there's an abundance of cases of black men raping white women. An abundance. You would think that only black men attacked white women. White men don't touch black women. I want to say to you, an untold story is the black women that were raped after the Civil War. Black women were raped so often by Union soldiers, that black women had to stay out in the swamps to avoid being raped by the marauding Union forces. And they got raped by the Confederates too. And white women tolerated and went along with it, which is why I don't fucking respect black feminists. None of you. If you're for women's rights, women's protections, yes. But to run after the same women that sat back and let their brothers, sons, and everybody rape y'all and act like they're your sisters and black men your enemies, any black woman on that is a fucking lunatic. And she should be dismissed. And I dismiss them. And I don't care if I'm unpopular. I'm going to keep denouncing stupid ass black feminists and cursing them until other people recognize I'm right. Are there black men that are abusive? Hell yeah. Are there black men that are cruel, that don't pay child support? Hell yeah. Are there black men that are cruel, rapists, neglectful? Yes. And those men often get punished. Just drop a dime. But do white men do that? If a black woman marries a white man, he beats the hell out of her. Do you really think his cousins that are the cops are going to come the same way they did if you had falsely accused me and I had black eyes? They'll take me out in handcuffs and not a scratch on you. They've built you up to hate your men and made you disloyal to your own men, thinking that you're advancing yourself and you've torn yourself down. We need each other. And one of the things that used to happen when slavery was legal, a whole lot of black men had to die to protect black women. We've never received thanks or an acknowledgement that under the worst of circumstances, when a white man tried to sexually harass my grandmother in the 50s here in Washington, my grandfather dealt with him. When her employer harassed her, my grandfather dealt with him too. Black men have done the best that they could, many of us. That's never in the narratives of lesbians like Alice Walker, who's married to a white man that hates black men. Bunch of black bisexual or straight up studs hate black men, and they've got no smoke for white men. And as I read, you're going to find white women raped and beat and brutalized black women too. In fact, I need to get a prop. Give me exactly 1 minute. I want to bring a prop that I have from Brazil because I need to show y'all something. It's right upstairs. Give me exactly 1 minute. Y'all can entertain each other. I want you to see this. Okay, I'm back. I want to show y'all something. I hope y'all didn't leave. Told you I wouldn't be long. I want to do this. Have you ever seen this before? Look at it. Get a good look at it. Get a good look at this. Show you one more time. Get a good look at this. Tell you what this is. I bought this in Brazil 30 years ago. This is Anastasia. Anastasia, or Anastasia, as it's said in Portuguese, was a beautiful, enslaved Afro-Brazilian woman who was so beautiful her master wouldn't leave her alone. So, as was the custom for white women, if there was a black woman that their man wouldn't leave alone, they would beat them, and they also had a muzzle. They had a whole mask that sometimes it would rust and destroy their skin and eat up their faces. So the white man wouldn't be attracted to them. They didn't demand fidelity from their husband the same way white women vote for white supremacy, unlike black women that vote against black men. The white woman decided to punish, and this is a custom here too, to put stuff to make black women ugly so white men wouldn't bother them. And that bitch Alice Walker and all the other no good fucked up black feminists, they don't tell you about this shit. About white women cutting babies out of black women and killing black babies and killing mixed race kids. Now just tell you, the sisterhood, that's because they suck white pussy. They also had other things. If you ever see old pictures of black women in rags, it isn't because black women couldn't dress. It's because white women didn't want black women looking good. So black women had to look dirty and bad as in order to keep them away from white men. And they weren't supposed to have perfume and other things that may make them appealing. They demanded that you be ugly. Let me connect it to now, ladies. That's why you have all these ugly, fucked up people like Karen Bass and monstrosities like Jasmine Crockett and Ayanna Pressley. All these ugly black women spokespersons everywhere because they don't mind if you're ugly. They don't want you to look good. It isn't black men. It's not sexist, abusive black men. It's white women. Your allies. Your best friends. Dumb assholes. This happened to women here. And women would be whipped in their faces sometimes here. So they have lashes and scars so they would not be appealing to white men. Your allies, the ones that have you saying killing black babies is the only public policy that we need. The same ones that get all the DEI, the same ones who get the affirmative action jobs that black men died for, then we're not allowed to earn an income to treat you right, then they tell you we're failures. The same ones that ran black men out of the homes through the social welfare programs, but poor white men could stay with their kids. Poor Latinos and Asians. All of this brought to you by the white feminist allies that you broads worship. That is the greatest act of treason in our race that you guys do. And y'all need to grow the hell up. And by the way, you're now in the crosshairs. They're blaming you black women for DEI and affirmative action and all of that. Even though it went to white women, they're blaming you. Just remember that. The Asian women, they were down with Mr. Boom and removing black folks from the universities. All the people that you're aligned with, the LGBTQ, who do you think take 1 in 9 or more black children away from black mothers? They ain't black men. It's your allies. It's a continuation of a slave bullshit. Except now, they've outsourced the slave drivers to every hole that can afford a weave and some nails and a bad attitude. And they get with some pussy mouth bastard and make bastards. And then that's all black men. And you chose a nigga with tattoos on his tongue and everything. And that's a representation of black men. Get to him out of here. We need to have this conversation. I hope your feelings are hurt. Our feelings as black men get hurt every day. Put a black woman in a human resources job and they hire everybody but black men. Black men don't say nothing about it, just trying to figure out what to do it. If black men were holding human resources jobs and black women didn't get jobs, people would assume everybody was gay. And they'd probably be right. Oh yeah. I hate feminism. I am the apostle of anti-feminist hate. That is my mission. Now let me go back to my book. And it is now 5:55 p.m. I have another hour, and we have all week to read this book. And by the way, send a donation, because there's a whole bunch of books in this series. I've been like collecting stuff. Even though I don't read, I'm faithfully taking to buying stuff that y'all need to hear. Pardon my commentary, but if I don't explain it and make it real, a lot of black folks miss the nuance. Okay, so let's go back. As the title of this book signals, the distinctive aspect of North American slavery was that such rape and other sexual violence was legal. For centuries, this country's laws established and protected slavery, including extensive white male rape and other sexual violence. Violence against black women was generally not criminalized under the law, and thus there was no recourse for sexually targeted black women or their male relatives. Those enslaved did not even have the right to fight back against the violence. Laws made fighting back against white violence a serious punishable crime. Still, as Feinstein describes, many did fight back in various ways, usually suffering violent punishment, including death as a result. I have a book, and I'm going to have to pull it out. It's somewhere nearby. And it's talking about black women that killed their masters for having been raped. It's somewhere around here. I'll pull it out, or I'll buy another one. A lot of women understood they have to get hung. When I was young, one of the first things I ever did as social action was being a part of agitating for the freedom of Joanne Little, a black woman who killed a white prison guard who was raping her in North Carolina. They tried to kill her. This is in 1975, 50 years ago. I didn't just start thinking about this stuff. And in 1975, I was 10. A lot of Negroes just started getting active in the last few years. God bless you. But when certain folks talk, some of us have been doing this ever since we can remember. Are y'all with me? So you got punished. Unmistakably, slavery's white male implementers did much more than steal the labor of enslaved blacks to increase white wealth. They also developed an extensive racialized system for forced social and sexual control of black women, men, and children. Among other things, the sexual violence targeting black women and often black men signaled and reinforced substantial white male power. It, it directly expressed aggressive white masculinity and often white stereotypes of the supposed hypersexuality of black women and men they attacked. The other key aspect of this male expression of sexual violence was that it was set within the white family context, whereby white women directly or indirectly helped to create the suppressive reality for black women. Feinstein documents this from several sources, including divorce petitions and the recorded narratives of enslaved women. This collaboration was especially true for the wives of male slaveholders. In order to protect their own limited privilege, they too operated out of white framing of enslaved black women that blamed the latter for the sexual violence perpetrated on them by their slaveholding husbands or sons. Indeed, many of these white women would punish sexually violated black women with yet more violent punishment, or by having them sold away from their families to other white slaveholders. As a group intermediate on the racial gender power hierarchy of the day, white women were both subordinated and subordinating. As Feinstein underscores this in the volume, that the slavery system did allow some power for white women under certain circumstances. For throughout the divorce petitions, white women consistently relied on these racial norms to achieve their goals, reflecting the challenges associated with occupying an intermediate status within the intersectional hierarchy. Moreover, in these records, white women also avoided the language of sexual violence or rape, overlooking the experiences and needs of enslaved black victims. Feinstein provides more conceptual amplification of how slavery stayed in operation for such a long period of time. She extends the systemic racism theory with the important concept of intergenerational transmission of white masculinity, drawing upon the diaries of white women as well as on newspaper articles, slave narratives, and divorce trial accounts. She describes how well white boys and men actually learned to sexually violate enslaved black women from their families and were encouraged by the gendered racist norms associated with white male masculinity to engage in this violence. Let us be clear, their mothers taught them. I've watched white mothers teach their children to hate black people. White women are the greatest teachers of white racism and white supremacy in this country. And only stupid black women don't know this. And black men that think having their penis in a white vagina, rectum, or jowl somehow makes you equal. You know what? May you be Rodney King'd until you die, you suckers. Now, I'm not trashing all interracial couples, but for people who are trying to, basically it's the white phallus or the white vagina escape hatch from blackness. If it worked, it should have worked for this 406,000 people in 1850, dumbasses. You can't fuck your way out of slavery or subordination or being black. You have to fight your way out. And you can't fight with your clothes off. The long-term survival of this country's slavery required these white masculinity norms, male relatives' encouragement to rape black women, and the protection of sexual and other racialized violence by state laws and enforcement agencies. Collectively together, these conditions enabled and incentivized white boys and men to engage in sexual violence against enslaved black women. Let me be clear, they also attacked free black women. There was a big trade, as Solomon Northrup's book, 12 Years a Slave. Free black women were raped and sold too. This person, it's a white Jewish woman, so she did all right. There's a reason some of us are not in the academy, because we could get more direct. Everybody black was a target. My family lives in D.C. because my great-grandfather did not want my grandmother raped, as possibly his wife had been raped by white men. Just saying. Sadly, the large-scale rape and other extensive sexual abuse of black women by white men did not end with the demise of slavery. You don't say. The slavery era was followed by much sexual and other white violence during the long Jim Crow era from the last 2 decades of the 19th century to the late 1960s. Sociological studies strongly suggest that at least 80% of black families experience significant white male violence, including rape and other sexual violence during the Jim Crow era. My family had to leave Georgia, most all branches, because of white male conduct. I want to also say to you, the hidden story is the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of black people murdered, raped, and beaten between 1864 and 1900. Black people were killed in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. No one's really done that work. It's the kind of stuff that you don't get funding for. You need to understand, we've only scratched the surface of how bad it has been. And I don't hate this country. I don't want you to hate anybody, but I want you to know what you're looking at. The legacy of toxic white male masculinity, it should be toxic white female feminism, and white male violence of the slavery and Jim Crow eras continue today. This includes the pernicious and racialized white masculinity, and I'm going to add white feminism that expresses itself today in today's widespread police killing of black men and women, as well as other police brutality and the disruptive and often violent marches undertaken by white male nationalists. This woman's a feminist, so she doesn't recognize what white women do. Our sisters that get sterilized in hospitals. Those black babies who had bones broken right down in Henrico County, Virginia, where a white woman's trying to kill black babies, and they gave her bail. Wake the hell up, wake the freak up. Black girls that get raped in schools. Black boys that get raped in schools by white teachers. Blacks that get raped in foster care, like Laquan McDonald. And white women do it just as much as white. My brother was molested by a white woman. I'm going to just put it out there. Who's trying to get me to. Yeah, I'm going to put it out there. So don't tell me about just white men, okay? There are other legacies as well. One consequence of centuries of various types of sexual violence under slavery and Jim Crow is the old negative white framing of biracial black white Americans. Under slavery, the children resulting from coerced sexual intercourse were automatically classified by the government and other officials as black in spite of their biracial ancestry. Look at how she wants to break us up. The so-called one-drop rule. This reality of distinctive racial categorizing by whites persists today, albeit more informally than officially. She's a lie. That whole biracial classification in the census has removed as many as 14 million people from the black American category to diminish our numbers. Okay, I qualify as biracial. To hell with that shit. I don't buy anything. I'm either all the way black or I'm nothing at all. I'm tired of this stuff. And my ancestors that could pass identified as black. This is garbage. So be careful. This is a liberal. Watch out for liberals and leftists. They talk a good game, but they've got a game too. That's why I'm bringing up this feminist shit. And see, she's a white woman. The main people pushing for this biracial category were white women that had children with black men that didn't want their children classified as black. They wanted their children counted as white. Racist assholes and stupid ass black men go along with it. They'll do anything for white pussy. In fact, those guys are dead to us. They get beaten up or whatever, that's on their ass. And don't call me. In addition to the intensive dehumanization of African Americans and the dominant white racist framing that developed under centuries of slavery and Jim Crow persists today, not only in the white minds but also in the discriminatory actions, violent and nonviolent, of whites in regards to jobs, housing, education facilities, and the criminal justice system. Let us say that the main architects of black boys being directed to jail are white female teachers in America, white women. Y'all need to wake the frick up. The people who set me up for academic failure in school were white women. They were not black. They weren't even white men. As Feinstein points out today, many white men evade harsh sentences for sexual violence against black and white women. So you're going to put white women in there. Okay, look at that, y'all. And masculinity continues to be performed through sexual exploitation of women. White racial framing of black women as promiscuous also lingers as an excuse for rape. Much negative framing of African American women in the dominant white racial frame has its origin in the slavery era. Unsurprisingly, the relevance of this substantial and violent historical background to the reality of contemporary systemic racism is not immediately evident to most whites. They know. Nonetheless, as Feinstein firmly establishes, the analysis of sexual violence against enslaved black women by white men is crucial for understanding the present-day racial and gender identity of whites and blacks and behaviors which reinforce oppression. This is by Joe R. Fagan at Texas A&M University. So it's a white dude. So when they start talking about that stuff, they start watering it down and trying to make it, whoa. Introduction. My master had power and law on his side. I had a determined will. There is might in each. This is from Harriet Jacobs. I think it's a life or the story of a slave girl. Forgive me for not remembering her name, the book title. In 1850, oh my God, I don't like the name. This is a family name, forgive me. In 1850, Robert Newsom, a successful farmer living in Callaway County, Missouri, traveled to nearby Audrain County to purchase a young girl named Celia. Newsom acquired Celia with clear intentions. He was 60 years old while Celia was aged about 14. He raped Celia on his way home from purchasing her and continued to rape her regularly for the next 5 years. But Celia resisted Newsom's sexual violence. On June 23, 1855, Celia told him she would hurt him if he came into her cabin that night. However, with his law-backed entitlement, Newsom ignored Celia and entered her cabin anyway. Celia's children, at least one of whom was a child of Newsom, were in the cabin at the time. Newsom demanded that Celia have sex with him. Instead, she hit him twice over the head with a large stick. He fell to the floor and died. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Judge Hall, who presided over the 1855 case involving Celia and Robert Newsom, instructed the all-white male jury, that self-defense could not be claimed in her case. Overlooking the years of rape that drove Celia to carry out this act of self-defense and resistance, the jury found Celia guilty of first-degree murder. She was hanged to death later that year. Where were the feminist black women? The rape of enslaved black women during the slavery era was commonplace. However, it continues to be a feature of American history which is ignored. Although contemporary scholars increasingly acknowledge the fact that such routine rape occurred, sexual violence against black women by white men remains one of the least examined topics within slavery and the experiences of black women. Previous research substantiates that the rates of rape can depend on heavily on social context. The prevalence of rape committed by white men against enslaved women during the antebellum period and the role that sexual violence played for white men and women during the slavery has yet to be thoroughly analyzed. I wonder why. To address these gaps, this book conducts a thorough analysis of sexual violence against enslaved black women by white men in order to understand the way in which rape was used to perpetuate privilege and oppression. The mixed race population during slavery provides one way to measure the frequency of interracial sex, most of which took the form of sexual violence and rape. Beginning in 1619, when the first Africans were forced into the British colonies of North America, the slave population grew rapidly due to a combination of the slave trade and natural births. And also the Indians added in, but they always make it seem as if everybody came from Africa. Be very careful, these liberals. The first official record of the interracial population in the U.S. was documented in 1850 census, which determined that 406,000 people were visibly mulatto out of 3,693,000 African Americans, or about 11%. Everybody that has a white father doesn't come out visibly mulatto. So the 11% is an absolute lowball number. I also want to give you information, people, that the number of black women relative to black women was low until 1870, meaning that white men had first picks of the few available black women for black men to get to. And the women weren't evenly disseminated or spread among the plantations, which means you could be on a plantation where there were no women if you were a male. In the Caribbean, a lot of the plantations, the men, there were, for every 100 men, there were maybe 35 women, meaning that there wasn't enough. Black men are probably so aggressive because we endured from the 1500s until the almost the 1900s an extreme pussy shortage. If you wonder why black men are a lot more mellow than white men, they're much more hard up. It's a psychological memory that it wasn't pussy, which is plentiful now, wasn't always the case. It's plentiful for white men that can give or take, not for black men. That's why black men are beggars, ladies. Stop begging. Begging for sand on the beach. You look like you've got psychosis. The term mulatto was used to refer to people of mixed African and white descent, and is based on the term mule, a crossbred animal, thus highlighting the attempt of whites to associate blacks and mixed race individuals with animals. Mulatto also included Indians. This whole thing about Negro was a lot of different people. So understand she's using the flawed methodology that everybody came here on a boat. Okay? I'm going to be very direct. I do have and did have African ancestors. I love it. I also had Indian ancestors. My grandfather was an Indian. His mother was an Indian, and her parents were Indians. And my mother is an Indian. I'm not hating any African. I'm only saying what is. My father's people are definitely African. My mother's people, heavily Indian. I like everybody. I'm not rejecting anything, and I'm not a pretendian. I want all of my ancestry. As much as I can embrace it, embraces me. And that doesn't want me, trick it. All right. We back to the mulattoes. This term will only be used here and when directly quoting other material. 10 years after the 1850 census, about 16% of the black female-headed households included a white father. These demographic records on the mixed race population during slavery offer insight into the frequency with which white men sexually exploited enslaved black women. Let me stop here again and tell you a flaw with this woman's methodology. There's a book by, I believe it's Richard C. Wade, Slavery in the City. If you knew black history well, and she is not a black historian, she's a sociologist. The majority of free black people in 1860 and 1850 were black women who tended to be mixed or half quadroon, octroon, whatever, and their children were often with white men. She's only talking about enslaved women. A lot of black women that got their freedom, they made the majority of the black population that was free prior to the Civil War, often had white fathers, white grandfathers, white husbands, lovers, and all of that, or even survived by prostituting or being used by white men. That's some of our families. That's Andrew Young's family. He comes from quadroons and octroons in New Orleans. There's a whole history of this whole Creole thing in New Orleans, the brass ankles, there's a whole culture, Melungeons, there's a whole bunch of this madness in various pockets. Southern Maryland, the Charleston area, Mobile, Blue Vein Society, you've got them, okay? You've got it in parts of Tidewater, Virginia, and in Appalachia. Understand this is why we have to do our history. And even well-trained people with research money, these white folks don't get it. Oh, but she's trying. So even the black women that were free had to be available to white men. Even the architecture and public works, they didn't put street lights in black areas so white men could pursue black women, black children, and black men under the cover of darkness. Part of black people being subordinated to white people is the writ large sexual rapine, abuse, sexual exploitation of black people, which is why they put people like Billy Porter and RuPaul and even Diddy and all this to showcase black degeneracy as a cover for these people to screw, rape, and destroy us sexually. And make us think that's keeping it real with freak-offs and degenerates like T.D. Jakes. And I would love for him to sue me. Hey, T.D. Jakes, sue me. Drag me into court. You know who I'm going to call to testify against you, T.D. Jakes? You know, Jermaine Jakes. I put his ass on the stand. You lying, pharisaical, heretical, apostate fraud. Please sue me. Give me a public defender. I absolutely will call Jermaine. And I'll also call the woman whose child your daughter tried to steal. Y'all don't want me. Y'all don't want the truth. I don't want to be in your damn church. Forgive me, I had to get that. I can't stand that dude. Okay, let me go back. What time is it? Oh, it's 6:23. We're going to stop in a few minutes. But do y'all like this book? Who liked this book? Who liked this book? This book isn't this long. This book was expensive as hell. This book is 85 pages. 85 pages, so I can get through this. Y'all like this? Who likes this? Tell me a like. I don't see no likes. I see what? 3 likes here? Okay, I need some more likes. Okay. Additional evidence of the prevalence of this sexual violence comes from slave narratives. In one analysis of 514 slave narratives, 12% of these women referred to experience of interracial sex during slavery. Of those narratives, 35% included women who either had fathers who were white men or had children with white fathers. This interracial sex was most often forced and always coerced due to the inherent power dynamic between free white men and enslaved black women. The rape of enslaved women by white men is considered by historians to be a routine figure of life, perhaps most enslaving, with abundant evidence that many slave owners, sons of slave owners, and overseers, in effect, raped the wives and daughters of slave families. Records from sales of enslaved women provide further evidence of the value that white men placed on black women's sexuality. Some enslaved black women were marketed as virgins, thus emphasizing the salience of their sexual experience for future owners. Moreover, the pricing of enslaved women based on skin tones indicated the sexual value of enslaved black women. On the auction block, lighter-skinned enslaved women were sold for an average of 5% more than darker-skinned women. However, skin tone did not influence the pricing of enslaved men. Light-skinned men and dark-skinned black men didn't get love. It's only light-skinned women. White women. Indeed, white men in New Orleans were known to flaunt their wealth in front of other men by putting the highest bids on enslaved women that they deemed the most attractive. These were called quadroon balls. Quadroon balls. And quadroon balls, the same way black men go to strip club and make it rain on strippers. Just because you think this stuff has changed, it really hasn't, people. These people would spend as much as $50,000 in money back then, people. $50,000 for quadroon. Who's got a calculator? Let me see. Who got a calculator for me? Who can multiply 50,000 by 35 for me? Because this phone here doesn't have it. Who can do that for me? Who can multiply 50,000 by 35 or even 40? Again, $50,000 times 40. Somebody give me a number. I'm waiting. Come on. Somebody got this. Give me a number. Come on. Moderator. Nobody got a calculator? Okay. Thank you. Brooke, of course, the New Yorker. $1,750,000. People paid, in today's money, $1,750,000 was a decent price, up to $2 million and sometimes double that, for a black quadroon or octoroon virgin to screw at quadroon balls. To have light, bright, damn near white, skin tight, mixed race pussy. As much as $2 million in today's money. The same way these billionaires marry women and divorce them and give them a big settlement. That's all this is now. When people say, oh, slavery wasn't really that important, it was dying out. People didn't really like slavery, they weren't making money. My God. $1.7 million for a side piece. And we need to understand the slaveholders, let's do some history. Which states in America had the most millionaires in the 1860s? Which states? Which two states had the most? And I'm going to just go ahead and tell you. And I want to see which states had the most millionaires. I'm going to ask which American states. Because when you find out, yes, New York had the most. Mississippi came second. You're correct. I think Louisiana will come next. I'm going to find out. We got to have this conversation. You understand how much money was wrapped up in slavery. Let's look. Look at this. The millionaires in this country, outside of New York City, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, if you want to know how they could pay $2 million for sex, they were making that much money working those people to death 5, 6, 7 years. And a black woman could have up to 20, 30 children. Children could be sold by the dozen. They talk about breeding people like horses, like chickens, like dogs. And this was done here in Washington, D.C. It was probably done by George Mason, of which George Mason University is named for. It was done in Maryland, Delaware, and in Virginia and North Carolina. People were bred, and the men were given, I guess, a silver dollar for each woman they got impregnated. That's how certain black men got their first money, was getting people impregnated. And many times they began having sex with black girls as young as 10 years old. We have a pedophilia problem in the black community, and part of its origins is what we've been through that we haven't decided to stop. That's why I'm with Jaguar. I want to remind everybody listening, I've got the link, and you can just continue to watch with me here. I'm going to be on with Jaguar and Dewan B in exactly, 30 minutes. Actually, 28 minutes. So I'm going to keep two platforms on, so you guys can just stay on one. But on the Angry Black Men's platform, I'm going to put the original pre-slated program on. How you guys doing? And we're going to get this done. And let me keep reading. Let me see if I can get through the introduction. I don't know if I'm going to get through the introduction, but let me ask y'all something, because it's already like 32. Let me see if I can get through a little bit more. Y'all want me to finish this book? Because this book is short enough. I can read this, and if I need to, I'll do it today. I'm down for doing that. I think I'll be with Jaguar for a minute, and we can resume this shit, because I want to kill this book. And I also want you guys to donate. There's a whole bunch of books in this series. I want to get at least 3 of them. And y'all think I'm begging because I'm begging. When you see these books, a lot of the stuff, I've been dying. I'm feeling better. And I'm going to get my ivermectin. Pray for me. I'm trying to get about a few thousand tablets. I'm going to split with moms. Looking at how I can go with Yaki. You guys need to look into Brother Yaki. Y'all need to look into the people that are Dr. Sebi's folks. You've got to look out for your health. I want to remind everybody, Dr. Watkins, who's a phenomenal medical doctor and naturopath, chicken increases your chances of prostate cancer at minimum 4 times. And I'm a chicken eating Negro. I now am feeding the chicken to my crows and my starlings and to Selfish. Selfish always wanted the chicken. Well, who thought the cat was right? She ain't gonna get prostate cancer. Stop eating chicken, people, unless it's organic. You're gonna have to raise your own stuff. I want to bring to everybody's attention, and I'm deadly serious. I want to continue to do this. I have a GoFundMe. Please share that with everybody, Sister Brooke and Sister Latoya. I appreciate it because I absolutely have to pay out of pocket to see the naturopath. My insurance doesn't cover it. But I do not want to grow boobs. I don't want hot flashes, and I don't want infusions in my ass. It sounds weird. For the rest of my life, hell, it sounds like being gay. I have to go every month and get pumped in my behind by somebody to stick me in the ass. I'd rather die. I told the doctor, kill me. Shit. If I don't have one thing stuck up my behind, I don't want nothing else. I don't understand people that want stuff going in them. I'm a man. I mean, I don't even like needles. Going in my arm would freak me out. Imagine. Okay, I'm not criticizing. Yes, I am. I'm criticizing. If you want something this size in that little butthole you got, really? This is the new thing, brothers or studs? This instead of the real thing with the real vein in it, with its own secret sauce? It's depopulation. It's part of the sexual violence. They weren't promoting LGBTQ when we were slaves. They needed people to pick cotton. Once they recognize that we can't be completely enslaved, then they don't want to deal with us as numbers. We've murdered 20 some odd million of each other with abortion, the feminists. Wake up, people. Let me keep reading. I'm going to stop in 9 minutes. And I'm going to stop in 9 minutes or maybe 10. And then I'm going to switch over and I'll be right back up ready for Jaguar. Right? And so here we go. Let me go back. Records from the sales of enslaved. Okay, let me skip down. So the men. Okay, indeed, white men in New Orleans were known to flaunt their wealth in front of other men, putting the highest bids on enslaved women they deemed the most attractive. That means the most light-skinned people. The exploitation of black women's sexuality for white masculine performances began at least as early as the auction block. Practices like flaunting one's wealth over the bodies of enslaved black women and subsequent sexual violence, this is what Diddy's doing too, that was meted out to them, were available to white men because the legal system supported this behavior. Laws on rape and the practice of law during slavery enabled extensive sexual violence against enslaved black women to go unpunished. Failing to criminalize the rape of enslaved women and deeming children of enslaved women to hold slave status not only enabled rampant sexual violence but encouraged it. Having typical laws in American slavery, Virginia was referred to as the mother of American slavery. Virginia was one of the first U.S. states to construct legal definitions of race and prohibitions of interracial sex and marriage, and is thought of as the leader of miscegenation laws and the general degradation of blacks. In 1662, the Virginia legislature passed a statute stating that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother, and that if any Christian shall commit fornication with a Negro man or woman, he or she shall, so offending, shall pay double the fines imposed on the former act. So it means twice the fine for fornication if it's black dick or pussy. As the statute dictates, children resulting from the rape of enslaved women by white men were not considered legally free, nor were they recognized as part of the white family, which enables free white men to conceal their sexual behavior with enslaved women and avoid responsibility for their actions. And they talk about deadbeat black men. all the nerve. Hmm, mm, 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 mm. The laws dictating that a child's status followed that of the mother combined with the high value of enslaved children as property, particularly young, healthy boys, ensured that white men who raped enslaved women within their households could profit. In other words, it's a financial incentive to shoplift the pussy. Hmm. In addition to enabling white men to rape enslaved black women and conceal their behavior, this statute financially incentivized rape of enslaved women. Despite the punishments associated with interracial sex written in the Virginia law, you really think they're going to enforce that, people? The rape of enslaved women was not criminalized, nor was legal protection afforded to these women. While the Virginia court did not directly state whether enslaved women had personal rights which rape could violate, no records exist from the 18th century Virginia courts in which a white man was convicted of raping an enslaved woman. Moreover, in 1669, the Virginia legislature explicitly protected whites from slave resistance and guaranteed the rights of whites to abuse and kill slaves that attempted to resist them. If you don't, your pussy or your life. And if you said, your pussy or your life. Damn. Hmm. Hmm. The legislature passed a statute declaring that if any slave resists his master or other by his master's order, correcting him, and by the extremity of the correction, should chance to die, that his death shall not be accounted felony. Which means if you beat your slave to death, if you killed him, it's not a felony, but the master or that other person appointed by the master punish him, be acquitted from molestation. Justifiable homicide. It's in the law. They have the right to kill us. You have to understand something. That was law. There's a sociological process by which laws can become customs, customs can become laws. It used to be a law that you could murder black people. Now it is a custom. Trayvon Martin is a custom. Emmett Till is a custom. Breonna Taylor, custom. Right? The girl from Chicago down in Texas, custom, custom, custom. But before, law, law, law. Enslaved black women could not legally resist sexual violence due to laws protecting old white slave owners' rights to kill those who did. While white slave laws reflect a lack of legal protection for enslaved women and set a standard for many slave states, laws did vary between states. Mississippi represents one of the harshest and most direct laws against any protection of slave rights regarding rape. In 1859, Mississippi explicitly stated in George v. State, 37 Mississippi, 316, 318 through 20, that the rape of a female slave under the age of 10 by a slave was not a crime because English common law did not recognize slavery and thus recognized no right of slaves in Mississippi, extended no such rights through legislation. All rights in slave rested with masters. The defense attorney in the case argued that the crime of rape does not exist in a state between African slaves. Their intercourse is promiscuous. In Mississippi, the rape of an enslaved woman was not a crime, regardless of the status of the offender. Meaning, look at this, black men, like Diddy, white supremacy encouraged black men to be violent and abusive and brutal to black women. We have to forego the right to be whores and terrorists towards our women the same way our women have to forego being asshole, pork chop feminist. Some rights that white supremacy gives you, you don't want. Some things we need to let go of. It's up to our sorry asses to stop. They like what they see. The justification for failing to criminalize the rape of enslaved men and women was based on the notion of sexual promiscuity of blacks, twerking, all this whole culture that they're promoting. And we know which community was heavily involved in the selling of slaves. You know, I'm not saying. I've got Gaza on my mind. This stereotype continues to be used in attempts to justify sexual abuses against black women today. Despite variations in Virginia and Mississippi law on rape, the outcome for enslaved women who were victims of rape was similar, with no record of legal protections from sexual violence. A general consensus exists among historians that enslaved black women had few, if any, opportunities to use the courts to defend themselves from sexual violation from any men until the end of the Civil War. This conclusion resulted from legal statutes as well as the conditions of slavery, which hindered access to the courts, and various tactics used by whites to discourage black women from filing charges. Not only did the lack of legal protection from sexual violence significantly shape the daily experiences of enslaved black women and white men, but it provided the backbone for a comprehensive system of gendered racism, which is entrenched into the fabric of the United States. Laws that refused to recognize the rape of black women as a crime while granting white men the right to kill those that resisted them, supported the routine rape of enslaved black women by white men. Moreover, laws dictating the condition of children to follow that of their mother enabled white men to conceal their sexual violence against enslaved women and benefit from the profit generated from children born out of rape. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Born out of rape into slave status. Interaction between whites and blacks and the meaning of these racialized identities in the United States were deeply intertwined, not just with slavery, but also with rape, shaping the continuous devaluation and sexualization of blacks today and is associated with myths of white purity and virtue. Uh-oh. I'm going to stop in a second. Studying the role of rape historically presents some challenges, in part because of the evolving definition of rape legally and culturally. During the slave era, force was considered a normal part of sex, and women were expected to resist. Rape only occurred when white man forced himself upon a white woman, and she gave up resistance, ultimately charging that she was raped. The norms around sex and rape in the 19th century reflect the privilege of white men and the difficulty even for white women to effectively convict men of rape. Let me stop here, people. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. I'm just about to shut this down and open these back up just with a different title. That way we have this thing going. How many of you want me to continue? I'm on page 5. And if I have to read this over the next few hours and after Jaguar, how many of you want me to do this? I may even have to grab a snack. I may order some fish or something, although I have some shrimp upstairs. I'm going to continue this, but I'm going to stop for Jaguar. That show is coming. So I'm going to ask you guys to come right back. You're going to get a notice. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to open this right back up. I'm going to end this stream. And this stream is about to be recorded, okay? I'm ending this. I'm ending the StreamYard. So that just closed. And I'm going to close a bunch of these. I'm going to open this right back up. I'm going to open this right back up. We'll be talking about I'm going to be with Dewan B. Okay, yeah, I'm about to put it up. This will be up in 1 second. So you guys can come into StreamYard while I get this thing hooked up. We'll put this on for 7 o'clock. No, I'm gonna put it on for 6. Here we go. There we go. That's almost there. Almost done. Almost up there. Here we go. Customize. And we'll be back in the studio in 1 second. Okay. We go into the studio. I'm about to close a couple of these. Get ready. Hold on 1 second. All right, I'm about to put it up. Yep. Going over to StreamYard for anybody, because I'm about to take 1 or 2 of these down. I want to take this one down. There are 43 of you here. I'm up in StreamYard, so y'all can go on in. Come on up. Here we go. I'm gonna pull this down. Hold on 1 second. This is almost ready. Okay, guys. It shouldn't have been that hard to follow it. Okay, guys, that's there. Gonna shut this one.